Welcome to the Totally Awesome Fishing Show. It's a trout fishing episode. We are in deepest Hampshire. We're near Winchester. It's a fishery called Church Paddock Trout Fishery. Very pretty little place. It's only quite small, but gin clear water. And I'm here, well, basically I'm going to be talking about casting instruction for my son Michael after he broke my fishing rod. I want to know how to use sight indicators on a small water. And what is it with this fluorocarbon leader? The man who's going to tell me all this is Eddie Sullivan, who's a casting instructor at the fishery here. Let's get there, let's get the information. The sun is out, let's get fishing. Well, we've got a fabulous day here, but listen, Eddie, what is it about this stuff? Fluorocarbon? I personally keep mine in these little dispensers, don't even know who makes them. And I put on there like £4, £6, £2, £5 a mono, and you just peel them off. So a handy little dispenser if you guys want to set up with different strains of it, but I'm using straight mono. Tell us something about this fluorocarbon.
Right, so basically the difference between fluorocarbon and standard mono is that first of all it has what's considered a refractive index, which is the same as water, which effectively makes it invisible in water. So we're told. Also, it sinks, whereas mono tends to float more.
So there's a density difference as well as, say, look, I'm using an ordinary mono here.
Yeah.
It will sink a little bit faster.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Diameters? Finer than mono, or can it depend on which fluorocarbon you use?
It can depend on what you buy. Obviously there's a lot of technology coming out now which is making mono thinner, which is making fluorocarbon thinner. There tends to be a variation. Generally it's a bit thinner than mono, and also a bit supple as well, more supple, which makes a difference. Yeah. Obviously with the presentation of your fly, making it move a little more naturally.
Now when it first came out, fluorocarbon, I did not like, and I'm not sold on it totally as its place, but it was pretty stiff and it had knot problems, that I would call knot problems, that would slip.
Yeah.
Now you just tell us, do you have a special knot for this for fly fishing?
Generally I find with fly fishing, most people learn a couple of knots and stick to them. Personally, I've used fluorocarbon for all my fishing. And I find I use a standard half-blood knot on the loop, and then I use like a surgeon's loop on the hook, and I find no problem with it. I do find certain brands of fluorocarbon a bit brittle.
Ah, so there is. So it can depend all on the brand then.
Yeah, and I also find it degrades with age very easily.
Does it really? i.e. in sunlight, that sort of thing?
Yeah. If it's not been stored correctly, or if it's been in your bag for too long, you definitely need to have a new roll as often as possible.
That's right. Oh, well, that's interesting, because I never knew that, so that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. What about its sort of stretch qualities? Like mono, obviously, I think has a sort of standard nylon 10% stretch. Is it like, or is it as good as, say, pre-stretched nylon? Well, years ago we used to get pre-stretched mono. Yeah,
I mean, there's certainly a school of thought that says that it doesn't stretch, and that basically you're in more contact with a fish, which can obviously make a difference if you're fishing at distance, or you're fishing, and you've got some slack line between you and the fish. So yeah, that makes a difference. You're in more contact with a fish.
You've obviously fished here a lot, and we'll show people it is absolutely, at the present time, tap water clear here.
Yeah.
So one assumes that visual is a big problem with trout with leaders. They're going to see it. You've got to get it down. Have you used it very long, fluorocarbon?
Yes, I have. Yeah, and I find generally it works well for me. I know we have anglers that fish mono as well, and I wouldn't say that they don't catch any fish, but my way of looking at it is that if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, so you're happy using it?
Yeah, definitely.
Now just briefly tell us, what sort of length would you recommend people to use? Is it something you have to use a long leader, or can you get away with a shortish leader?
Generally I find if the fish are spooky, whatever leader you're using, it helps to use a longer leader, because obviously your fly line is then further away from the fish.
Yep.
In terms of fluorocarbon specifically, I wouldn't say there was any necessary advantage in having a longer leader than you would with mono. But generally, whenever I'm sort of tutoring anyone or giving instruction, I'd say use a rod length of leader, simply for the fact that you can have a weakness when your line is running over your rod rings.
Oh, I see. Yes,
more than anything else.
When you bring the leader in to net the fish, you mean?
When you're netting fish, you don't necessarily want double the length of a rod. certainly when you're learning, I understand and realise that, you know, obviously there's times when people prefer to use a much longer leader.
Gotcha.
But generally, with this kind of fishing, still waters, I find, you know, straight through fluorocarbon keeps it simple. Right,
well, we're going to have a little challenge here and give it a go. Mike's going to spool up with some of this, you've kindly donated us some of this £6 fluorocarbon, and I've got £6, I think it's called Pro Gold, it's just coarse fishing line I use, and we'll see how we get on. Well, that was some really interesting information from Eddie. I'm going to be using just this standard leader, tried and trusted. Can't go wrong, can I?
And I'm going to be using the latest and greatest fluorocarbon, which he absolutely loves. I've personally never used it before. I'm also using a different rod today because I broke the last one, which didn't go down too well. So
talk about that. This is my best rod, by the way.
Hopefully with some casting instruction I might be able to improve on my cast. But thankfully it's not a big water, so I won't have to be doing too much distance casting. But yeah, so we'll give the fluorocarbon a go. We can already see trout rising on the water. It's lovely gin clear water. It's really nice sunny clear. Yeah. Let's have a look at the fishery. Well, with this the sun's nice and high in the sky. We're about midday now. I've got the Polaroid glasses on, and I can see some trout in here. See some rainbows, a few rainbows, brown trout, and then even I think there's blue over there as well, which I'd love to catch. I've never caught one myself, so maybe have a go at that one. But really nice clarity. Looks good condition. The fish look quite good condition as well. So hopefully we get a fish.
Well guys, Mike's actually hooked up 2 solid takes on that fluorocarbon, but I've equalled it with 2 on my standard just nylon. It's just £6 Pro Gold that I use for barbel, chub, carp, everything. So it's sort of told us nothing at the moment, but I've just lucked out and got a 3rd fish hooked up. I stripped him on a little bit harder. Hopefully the hook holds out. That is, now look, just look right on the front, sticking out the net. You can see the chomp. He's just nipped at it. Let's get him out properly before the hook falls out or I fall in. There guys, look where that chomper is. He's absolutely just nipped at that fly, and as I say, that's what I think they are. They're just nipping at it. Fast strips didn't do it for us, but what a superb looking fish. Look at that, my God. There we go guys. Is Mike going to catch up? And we had solid takes there. It's 3-2 to the ordinary nylon. Yeehaw! I'm not a great lover of fluorocarbon, but what can I say? Mike actually hooked up 2 fish before I did. Is it his fluorocarbon or my skill? It's his skill. Well guys, I was trying for a bigger fish, about £5 back here in the corner. As I'm walking back, I could see these fish cruising. I thought they're not taken, and I saw one on the bottom just going right down on his nose, picking up what must be small nymphs coming out of the weed, because it's turned into a lovely sunny day. So I've got another fish hooked up, still on the white chomper. Fingers crossed we get it in. Oh, Mike's hooked up as well. Here's a double whammy. Here's a totally awesome crew. It's a bit crooked, guys. It's a bit crooked. We'll see what we can do. Playing fish with one hand. Hang on a second, we've got to level everything up here. There's Mike's fish. Oh, Mike's has come off. That's on fluoro. Meanwhile, I'm not going to mess around with this, we're going to get this one now. So that was a double hook up there, one on fluorocarbon, one on plain nylon. Here we go. Two. The totally awesome net. That's the sound we like to hear, guys. Number 3, to the monofilament leader. Now, I've been fishing close in, which is my normal method of stalking. It seems to be working. Set them up the trees. Now, what I've been doing here is something I don't normally do, and that's strip the fish on by hand like this and play them by hand. If they're slightly smaller fish, you know, then you can do that. Make sure you hook the fish up well, and then you can get the line back on the reel should you so wish. Tell you what, he's a game fish, this one. And I've still seen that one as about 5-6 pounds. I'm going to keep working away till I see if I can't get him out. Come on, come to Totally Awesome. Does not want to give up. It's a string puller. Oh. He's in the net. Yeah, they do scrap well in here, there's no question of that. Yet sort of 2 or 3 pound fish must be the average here. I mean, he could have netted that earlier on, and yet it just got to the rim of the net and he just tore away again, and he still hasn't got it in yet. Oh no! Oh no, why did I say that? Oh no, 4 in a row. I think I better go and give him my fly, guys. Any comments from over there? That's not a very happy fisherman, folks, over there. We can see at the moment there's absolutely no difference in the number of takes between the fluorocarbon and the regular straight 6 pound mono. But for some reason mine have stayed on. I saw it's skill and dexterity. It's just luck. It's luck. Mike's hasn't, but you saw he's fighting it hard enough. We don't know what it is. We checked the point of the hook. They both seem the same, but I've given him my fly now. They're both shellback white chompers. Exactly the same fly, so he changed over. We're going to leave him to it and just see if that is the fly. Maybe have a little speck. I think I told you before, watch your back cast in case you catch a fence or anything like that. You might just turn the point over your fly, and if you lose 2 or 3 fish, then you've got to look at the fly or change it. So off you go, run and play.
We'll give it a go.
Give it a go. Well, change of fly's done it, guys. Mike's hooked on. Over there, he's over there. He's hooked on again. A little bit more pressure, I reckon, Mike. Well, thank goodness Mike got that fish. So he's actually leading on the number of takes over fluorocarbon. He's got 6, but he's only got 1 fish. He is still fishing, and while Mike's working away there on the other side of the bay, I've come up, going to talk to Eddie again, because I want to talk about my wife's washing up cloth. No, these are strike indicators. Now, when they first came out, especially on the reservoirs where, you know, they're called sight bobs, I think they were called back then, people used to use years ago pieces of wool, so it's not really new. Like everything in fishing is nothing really new, but they use these sight indicators almost like a sort of a float. It was quite controversial. People say that it doesn't, you know, it's not real fly fishing. But last year my eyes were open to it. We did a film up on Farmore on the reservoir up there, And the guys were doing it, and they weren't, I couldn't understand it, I still can't really understand it. They just let it drift around in the wind, and they absolutely crucified us. Huge long leaders, fishing a little buzzer, a team of buzzers down in deep. They knew what they were doing, and they caught trout. And after that, I've been thinking about these things. So now, Eddie, tell me, are there situations in a small water where these could be used?
Yeah, so strike indicators. Basically, originally we believe they were developed on fast-flowing and deep rivers where there was a need for a weighted nymph to be out of the stones and the gravel as it worked its way along the river. By using something which kept it at a certain level, it allowed the fly to stay out of the rocks and any snags on the bottom. So you keep your fly in the strike zone where the fish are without leaving it snagged on the bottom with any debris along the riverbed.
And then you just see that sight bob, presumably literally bob under, I guess, like a float.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can use, you know, your traditional fishing techniques of the line moving, but it gives you an extra visual indication of any bites.
And I assume if, I mean, let's face it, fishing rivers is much harder than fishing in a lake or a still water. If you were a beginner, you know, feeling a take in a river is nothing like feeling a take in a lake. You know,
Yeah,
you're
certainly.
actually fishing harder. So would that give an advantage to a beginner?
Yeah, I believe so. Obviously, it's when you're fishing a river, there's lots of false bites, i.e. because of the flow, quite often the line is snagged and moved around in a way that may look like a fish. Obviously, again, with an extra visual stimuli, you've got a chance then of, you know, reacting a lot quicker.
What about when you get weedy conditions? You're talking about keeping the fly away from, you know, rocks in a river. I've got to assume in a lot of clear waters, I mean, I live in Hampshire, so there's plenty of clear waters here, they do get weed, they do get algal blooms, and sometimes, you know, you just want to sort of feel, my God, I wish I could suspend that. Would it work under those circumstances?
Yeah, and this is something that we're sort of encouraging here at Church Paddock, is that because we do have a weed growth in the summer and it can be quite, you know, quite extensive, what we try to do is keep the weed at a minimum level. So we do cut it to keep it as a carpet, because it actually allows the fish some shade, and it allows these kind of insects to breed and, you know, survive in the lake. But by using an indicator, you can actually set the depth of your nymph or your fly, so just above the weed, so you're not constantly unhooking weed off your fly, you're not constantly getting snagged in the weed, but you're leaving your fly at the perfect level where the fish sit just below in the weed, and they'll come up to take your fly. So yeah, it's great on still waters, and it lends itself to this kind of clear water fishing.
Now, Eddie, I've not actually used these indicators before, so do they just stick on the line? I mean, how do they actually attach to the line? And more important, do they slide? Do they not slide when they're, you know, when it's wet?
Right, so yeah, there's a few different types of indicator available on the market, and they vary slightly. Some are like a small fishing float where you can basically move them up and down the line. Some are more fixed things. These foam type that we've got here are basically just like a sticky on one side. You can see that at the camera. And basically what we do is we just peel the sticky side off and then take a piece of line and you just fold it over the line like so and push the two sticky sides together. Now obviously, assuming that the stickiness is still there, you can then move that up and down the line. You may have to peel it to move it again, but always check that it's set at a depth, otherwise use a new one if the stickiness wears off. And what that does is that basically allows you to set your hook at the other end of the line at any depth.
Now, the other thing I notice is they fish these, you don't retrieve them, do you? You don't retrieve them at all. You sort of fish them static, really, don't you? Or drifted on the wind.
That's correct. You know, with a lot of buzzer fishing, there's very little movement put into the fly. If you think about it from a natural kind of movement, a lot of buzzers and small nymphs do kind of drift around on the currents and with the wind. And you know, by not touching your line, sometimes you're actually fishing more naturally than you would be by touching your line. It's something difficult to convince a lot of fly anglers to do because they're so used to retrieving and putting action into the fly. However, you know, there is definitely a case for it. It's certainly, you know, a good way of fishing, and it certainly works.
It is another method. Now, this one you wouldn't be using with like heavily weighted nymphs or anything like that. Would you be using a lot smaller buzzer type patterns?
Generally, people use buzzers and small nymphs. However, I've heard of people using larger nymphs with sight indicators. To be honest, I would imagine, you know, you need to put movement into the fly if you're going to use a big fly. Obviously, otherwise, you know, the feathers are kind of not doing their job.
Yeah.
So yeah, generally it tends to be buzzers.
And Mike's going to he's going to soldier away on the fluorocarbon there, and I'm going to actually try these sight indicators. So what sort of pattern would you recommend?
Any kind of buzzer would do. You know, kind of like your okie dokies or your small bloodworm patterns. Anything with a little bit of flash is always good.
I was just going to say, is it a particular colour, or do you need like a natural sombre colour? Can you use something with a sparkle in it?
Yeah, I mean, I find personally the things with a kind of holographic flash on the buzzers, they work really well. Some of them are very lightly dressed, hardly anything at all more than a hook. Others dressed a bit more.
And those are obviously going to be suspended vertically.
That's right,
in the water, aren't they? Yeah. So what you're saying is, with these sparsely dressed buzzers, you just let them hang. But if you had a hackled pattern, you need to make it pulsate or move it to some degree, you know, to get those fibres moving a bit, really.
That's right. To be honest, really what the indicator offers you is to set the depth that you're fishing at and maintain that depth. What you've got to remember when you're fishing a floating line or any kind of line is you're always drawing the fly up to where the line is, i.e. if you've got a floating line and it's on the surface, you're always going to be drawing the fly up towards that. Whereas if you finish fishing an indicator, your fly stays at the exact level that you set it at. So if the fish are feeding high up, you can set the fly high up. If the fish are feeding on the bottom, you can set the fly low down. Whether or not you add movement is entirely up to you. Obviously, if the fly isn't fishing and catching static, it's always worth twitching it, putting a little bit of movement in, see how the fish react.
Busy doing interviews and I'm sneaking them in.
Oh no, he's going well, isn't he?
He's got some gas this one, yeah. They're taking much slower retrieve. Like I say, we're using the same fly really, but...
Was it that change of fly? Is there a little speck on it?
I don't think it's the fly. I think it's my
Technique?
beginner's technique of leaving the line too loose. And because all my fish I've lost as they've shaken their head. So it's definitely because I reckon I'm not keeping the line tight. So these last 3 fish I've had, I've bullied them a bit.
So it helps pull the hook in as well.
Pardon? Yeah, gone a bit tighter with the line, and been pulling the line in harder, not letting them shake their head really. But obviously when they do shake their head, you've got to be careful of pulling too hard, because that's when they do, either you pull too hard, as I've had before, where they've just
Pinged
pull
off,
too hard and you pull out the lip. Yeah. So it's a balance really, but the last 2 takes actually, these 2 I've had this side, I've seen the take, and it's always exciting. That's what's got me so into fly fishing, is that visual take.
Did you see the mouth take then?
Yeah.
See the white mouth goes quite something.
It's frustrating because you see them, they get angry, they miss it a couple of times, they get angry, and almost when they get angry you tend to go, oh no, I'll strip quicker, but don't. Let the fly sort of sit there for a bit, tweak it slower. And definitely the last 2 fish I've had as they've done that. I've missed a couple where they've been snapping at it, they've missed it, come back round, and I've tweaked fast, getting excited, moved the fly too quickly, and they've actually darted off. So I think it's a case of being patient, and this weed's starting to come up as well, which has been a bit harder, but that's fish number 3. 3 all, I believe.
Unfortunately, yes, but I'm going to go on that sight indicator now.
Okay.
I don't think you need it.
No. Good scrap for a small size fish, but lovely markings again. And that weed's starting to come up, so Graham's, I believe, going on the sight indicators now, the strike indicator, sorry, and we'll see how he does with that.
You're going to get crucified.
No, I reckon I'm going to be stalking. I think I'm going to be going around this lake, doing laps of the lake.
I'm here, people. I'm trying to give instruction, and my son is absolutely caning the... I want to say crap, but I won't use the word crap. He's caning the crap out of the trout now. He's absolutely kicking my butt now. I'm not doing any more of this interviewing. You go and do the interviewing, mate.
No, I think I'll stick to this.
You got the pool now?
This one took completely blind. I couldn't see. We've got this overcast light now, so it's just white cloud. It's horrible to try and see you fly.
Yeah, we don't need to see it. I can see you pulled straight into that one.
This one, cast out. Again, sometimes I like to practice my castings. I'm a beginner. I've had a few fish already, so I thought I'd practice casting. Fly barely hit the surface, and it absolutely, it was going to all knotted up. It just flew out of my hands, the line.
We saw it was way out, about 20 yards down the lake.
Absolutely steamed across the lake. So, if I can see this fish, it'd be nice. I haven't seen it yet, so.
Now, when they're scrapping, they don't necessarily have to be big fish, do they? You know,
they're really good fight. I have to admit that I think I might be commandeering this rod.
Yeah, it's tasty, isn't it?
It's very nice. Hopefully I won't break this one, but...
I hope not, I'd rather hope not.
And we finally, totally awesome fishing show, put some new line on the reels, and it is lovely. It does make a big difference to your casting, especially from a beginner's point of view, from my point of view. The new line, that old crap that Dad had was just horrendous.
What was he talking about? When he says that line is brand new, folks, I found it in the shed. It is at least 35 years old.
Fished for, that's
I think two of the old airflow lines, and they're not even new. I found they were supposed to be new in a box, but they actually had a tag in on them, so I must have had them for test or something, but it's such a pleasure to use them.
Strangest take again, guys. I've had this once before. Sometimes when I want to move spot, I just start winding the fly in. I can't be asked to strip it in and then wind it all in, wind all the snap. So I just started winding my fly in, and I had it on the straight wind. And that's the second time I've been fly fishing, and I've just
winders. Yeah, we call them winders.
Yeah. The fish on. I didn't know I had it on. It suddenly went tight, and then zip, and this is a big fish. This is my fish of the day if I can get it in the net. It's been in and out 4 times now in here, but this is a nice fish.
Fish of the day, I'd say, yeah.
I'd say that's my fish of the day, definitely. Look at that. And look at that chomper right in the scissors.
That's been a hell of a fly.
Oh, it's been absolutely brilliant, that fly. Okay. Well, guys, I've had a few fish now, and I've decided to let you in on a few tips from beginner to beginner. One of the tips is, it's late afternoon now, it's about 3 o'clock, and you get this algal bloom, you get this weed that comes up. We've had a really hot sunny day, so the weed comes up around about lunchtime through to the afternoon. Now, as a beginner, I tend to avoid that weed, and I go right on the other side of the lake where there's no weed, so that I can cast into a spot and not get any weed on my fly. Now, I've changed things today, so what I've done is I've gone to the weed, and I've noticed that most of the fish are actually in this weed, this algal bloom. And I'm guessing that's because when they're fished for, they know that anglers like me, the beginners, go up the other lake. Obviously they don't know they're beginners, but they push themselves into the weed because they know it's harder to be caught there. So they're very wary, the fish here. So that's one tip. Go towards the weed, that's generally where the fish are, towards the late afternoon, lunchtime to late afternoon. Now the other tip is, which I've just had a fish, and it's quite strange, but it's worked a few times. I've had 2 takes on it, I've actually lost 2 fish, but got 1 on it. Is I'm casting into the weed, and I keep casting, I'm trying to find gaps in the weed. Now this weed is all over the place, so it's really hard to find those gaps. So yeah, I got completely sick of it. I just cast into the weed, my fly went into the weed, started sinking down. I knew it had weed on it, but I thought there's too many fish around here to disturb it. So what I did, as opposed to just stripping in and then casting back out again with a clean fly, I did a really tough jerk on the line to clear that weed off the line. Now not only did it clear the weed, but it also spooked all the fish and it sparked them up, because there's this bright fly with a bit of weed on it just sinking, and it went whoosh and it lit up, and I saw all the fish switch on. So following that big jerk, I then did some slow tweaks because I knew my fly was clean, and lo and behold, fish went straight for it, snapped it up, and I had a really decent, probably about 3 pound rainbow trout on that method. So I did that a few times as well. I lost a couple, but it worked. The fact is, it worked. I cast onto the weed, let it sink a bit to the depth that those trout were at, that I thought they were at, one big jerk, and I saw them switch on, turn toward the fly. Then I just did some really slow tweaks, and they're swimming up to it and then snapping. And another tip that I've got for you, which I didn't learn myself, but I learned from Dad, is a lot of the time when you cast out, you can't see your fly. You can see your fly line, you can see a bit of your leader maybe, but you can't actually see your fly. Now you can see the fish. This is quite a visual fishery, there's really good clarity here. You can see the fish. Now what a lot of beginners tend to do is they just watch their line, they strip in, they don't think fish. Now I'm actually hooked on it now, so I've been thinking fish. I'll be in there before I know it soon, swimming around like one. And I've been watching the fish, I've been watching their behaviour. And a lot of the time, I've had a few takes where you'll be watching the fish, you'll see it turn towards your fly. Automatically, I know that if it turns towards my line, I know it's seen my fly. And sometimes you can't, because you can't see your fly, you might see the trout, a white flash of the bottom lip of the trout. You'll see a white flash. Don't take that as, oh, he's just snapping at something else. Pretty much 70% of the time today, that has been my fly. Just a white flash, I've pulled into it, and I've got fish on. So there's another tip for you. And another tip for beginners, it's very rare for me to have so many tips like this. Another tip I found, it was quite breezy earlier on. Obviously with the weed about, I've been checking my fly. It's good to check your fly every now and then because the trout won't have it if there's weed on the end of it. So I've been checking my fly, and what's happened from past experiences is that I've been checking my fly just facing the lake. The wind's been going in my face and it's blown all my fly line around the top of the rod and it just twists up. And then you look like a bit of an idiot when you're doing this. And you see, on one of these, you see them going up to the tip of the rod, untwisting the line, going back down, and then as you go down your rod tip flickers and then it tangles again, which is done now. So, having done that countless times and being a Pullen, we take a few times to get things wrong before we actually learn about it. What I've done is I now stand side on to the wind, like this. I allow the wind can then blow my line that way, away from my rod. It allows a sag in the line, then I can check my fly, here, get the weed off, without my rod tip being tangled. And another tip for you. Right, this one, last tip I promise. As you're stripping line out, you see, you want to do a long cast, you start stripping line out. As a beginner, I tend to just strip the reel and it's done that. A nice little bird's nest, still works, still pulls line out, but it jams, okay, and it's got a bird's nest. So, not ideal, is it? What I found is that casting wise, it actually slows your casting down, it makes it really inefficient. So, keep the reel against you like this, against your jumper. This is just a tip I taught myself. Keeping that line tight as you pull it out, you're pulling all those loops out. Get all those loops out, keep pulling. It's where you've just done a bird's nest basically. So there you go, it's all out. Then I pinch the line here, keep it tight. I can come off my chest now, but I'm just pinching the line with my fingers in there. And then I wind it on tight again. And what I've noticed as a beginner is that it allows me to shoot that line out much better. Now it's obviously we've got new line at the TAOUTDOORS Show. I say new line, it's 30 years old, but it's not used. It's much better, I've noticed as a beginner, with nice clean fresh line. But once that line is tight on that reel, it definitely makes casting a lot easier. Guys, I'm beating him so much so that I'm now going on to different species of trout. And here we have, look at the markings on that overwintered brownie, I think.
It is, it's a slim line one.
Very slim, but look at the markings. If we can get that out. Look at the markings and dots on that lovely brown trout. That is a stunning trout.
Now that's probably like, might even be a spawned out one, you know,
yeah,
because he looks very thin.
Very skinny, yeah.
Beautiful gold colours on the flank. What a fish.
Brilliant.
You can see why people get absolutely besotted with brown trout only, can't you?
Well, look at that. I mean, the markings on that are brilliant. And by the way, Dad, I'm beating you.
Oh, thanks for reminding me.
It tells its own story, people. Look at this one go. That's on the sight, Bob. Second cast, it just disappeared. It's sunk from sight. I had one cast, I thought, I can't get on with this method, I don't like this. Bit of a pig to cast at close range, but once you get a good bit of line out, you're okay. I got it out just where Eddie said to get it. He said, if you can just get it out on that angle in the middle there, he said, I know it's where the fish are laying. But that's weird, folks, because it was just hanging there. It wasn't doing anything. I did have one little tiny, like a draw on it, and I thought, is that it? So I had another cast out there, and blow me down. You can see the sight log in the water there, and I think it's a Dameron blue. I think it is actually one of the blues. Wow, it's a light coloured fish. Yeah, look at the colours on that.
Look at him go. He's on the surface. You actually see that little sight bob out there. That is absolutely amazing. Second cast using one. Will it be my new technique, I ask myself. I still like the visual aspect of fishing, but here he comes again. I've got a feeling he's going to take off again. I'll tell you what, it's a good scrap of this blue. That's most peculiar. I can sort of see the principle in it, but it's just after 45 years of stripping flies and tweaking flies and jerking flies, just leaving something laying static's a bit peculiar. Hey, I'm not knocking it. Mind you, it's not in the net yet, is it? What net? There we come. Look at that fish. I'll just go back to the car and get the net. Now, if you can see that there, you can see it's just in its top jaw there. It's just nipped at it. In we go. Oh yes, that's a cracker. That is an absolute beauty.
Yeah.
And there, guys, is what looks like a single grain of sweet corn, but is one of those sight bobs. And do you know what these are going to be used for by Uncle Graeme? Carp. They've got to be the way forward. This, when I get it out of the net, is the minuscule, you can see that little buzzer there, but I just fancied that one because it's got that sort of flashaboo stuff or something, that tinsel on the back and that nice yellow target there. It's not so much for the trout to see, I suppose it's for me really, but honestly, let me bring this fish up. This is something else. Look at that. And people say, oh, stockfish. That might have been in there longer than that, because look at the tail on it. Absolutely like a salmon, that one. That is a beauty. I think I deserve a still picture of that one. We have had a blind river day here, and we didn't even turn up till 12 o'clock. Again, totally awesome and late. Let's get a still picture of this one. Guys, we've done all the interviewing we can, we've done all the talking we can. I'm back in action with that sight bob. It just buries, man. It absolutely buries. There's no question it works. And that was just, I wasn't even moving, it was static. Rainbow this time. And you can see, I actually deepened it. I did what Eddie said, I went a bit deeper. I was about 2 feet deep. And I could see the trout, you know, they're just swimming straight past it, allegedly, but because it wasn't in their face, I wasn't on the same plane. I can see now, that's exactly what this sight bob business does. You can adjust it, get it on the right plane, so when the trout swim past, it's absolutely in their face. And they are just loving it. There we go. And that, folks, is the end to a totally awesome fly fishing session. I could barely say that if I had 2 beers. Look at that fish. Yes, I mean, we have absolutely had a ball here today. I've learnt something new, this sight bob fishing. Mike's had his first brownie on a fly, haven't you, Mike?
Yeah.
We've had a great day. Brilliant fishing here. You've got clear water stalking if you want it, or you can use his sight bob. You can get all the tips on casting if you want as well from Ed, the bailiff here. Let's go. And there we go, young lad over there, I guess he's learning fly fishing, he's into a fish as well. Beautiful, fantastic evening. There is that tiny little buzzer with that sort of high-vis yellow fluorescent ball there, which is like a target, and he's just nipped in the top. And do you know what I wonder? I've learned something there. On this suspender fishing, if he's come out, but I'll throw it in the water, might get another one. On this suspender fishing, I have to ask myself, I wonder if that float bob actually acts like a sort of a self-hooking device. As they turn down, that sight bob holds a hook in. But I mean, I struck both fish, fair dues. What a day's fishing. Well, guys, I hope you've learnt something there. I certainly learnt something. Have you, Mike? You've had
definitely. I've had a blinder
He
today.
has had an absolute blinder. He's had like 10 days trout fishing all rolled into one here. It's
Oh,
like
sweet.
Christmas, birthday, wedding. No, we won't go there. Not wedding yet.
No, thanks.
No more editing otherwise. What I can summarise is I've definitely learned that sight bob can suspend the nymph vertically in the water, which I can't fish really. It's a method I can't fish. Although I can visually watch them, I cannot do that. So it definitely helps. And I do have to wonder, when that goes under, obviously I've got quite fast instincts. I've been doing it for 40 odd years. I can strike quickly. But for a beginner, I wonder if that little piece of foam actually holds the hook in the mouth as the trout turns down and gives them a chance. So if you're a beginner, maybe sight bobs are the way to go. So what did you learn, Mike?
Well, I've learned today, obviously I've been using the fluorocarbon. Dad's been using the mono, and never really used it before, so I didn't know what to expect. But what I found as a beginner, casting wise, with mono I used to get wind knot after wind knot when your leader flicks around in the air and does a knot on itself. What I found with mono is I used to get 3 or 4 wind knots by the end of the day. Dad used to hate it. I used to be lucky to land most of my fish. I have not had one wind knot today with the fluorocarbon. And I've seen the line twist every now and then when I'm casting, it's twisted on itself. But that stiffness of that material definitely helps for a beginner, I would say, with those wind knots to prevent that weakness in the line. Because what happens is that wind knot, if you get a big fish, pop, the line will snap. So for me, I'm very happy with the fluorocarbon that I used today.
That's good. Well, that's a summary of it, folks. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks to Ed for that casting instruction he's given us. And I'll tell you what, I'm sure we will be back here at some stage fishing. Keep watching.
The Totally Awesome Fishing Show.
It's the best one on YouTube.